Remember that everyone's perception of law enforcement is different given both their geographic and family histories and their group histories. So for example, if you look at the history of our country, here it is on a timeline, and we start with just our, the country is founded, and then eventually we found our nation, the continent is populated, and then we found our nation. And then at some point in history down the road, we have two people who are born, and 15, 20, 30 years later, we meet each other. Now one of us is a police officer and one of us isn't. It's kind of like we get caught in thinking that really the only thing that is important here is the lifetime of these two individuals. But it turns out that all of this area feeds into how we perceive each other over here. So for example, if you were raised in the Northeast and you've been there for your entire life and generations of people have been there, you have one perception of law enforcement that's different. Well, why? Because law enforcement in some parts of our country, like the Northeast, for example, began when we established groups, night watch groups, that were simply watching the docks to make sure that merchandise was not stolen overnight. And you would say that group, the night watch group, that's a good thing. We like police officers because they protect our property. But if you were raised in the South, just as far south as Virginia, or as far south as the Carolinas, well, the kinds of law enforcement that began in those parts of the country were for an entirely different purpose. They were there to patrol to make sure that slaves didn't escape. Here they were making sure that property wasn't lost. Here they were making sure that property wasn't lost. Do you see the difference? This means if you were raised under one context, you have one perception of law enforcement. If you're raised under another, you have a different perception. We've got to keep that in mind. It turns out our presuppositions, what we think we know, what we've experienced, changes. Let's say, for example, I said to you guys, hey, tomorrow night we're going to go and entertain ourselves. We're going to see a fight. We're going to go see a UFC fight. There's one right down, we'll wait till next spring. There's a great one on Saturday, May 5th, right? So we're going to go see a UFC fight together. Only I'm going to take you to a different kind of UFC fight. This is going to be a GUFC fight. Have you ever been to a GUFC fight? Slightly different. It's the Gandhi Championship Ultimate Fighting. Now, I think if I told you we were going to do that, you would say, what? What kind of fight is that going to be? That's a stupid thing, because Gandhi doesn't fight. What kind of a ground fighter do you think Gandhi would be? What kind of a competition would this be? Why? Because you have in your mind a prior association between Gandhi and the peaceful, benevolent, nonviolent pacifist that Gandhi was. Sometimes people see this and they bring that presupposition with them. And for a lot of people in our culture, this star has a meaning that preceded it. And so when they see it and they think about it, they right away have to overcome a perception in order to understand what we're even talking about. Does that make sense? I think it's possible for us, though, to change definitions, to take something that's got a bad connotation and make it a good connotation. We've done this with language over and over and over. You realize that this word that you use all the time to mean something kind of goofy or stupid or silly, this is not what the word originally meant. You know that, right? When this word was originally used, it meant just the opposite. It meant to be blessed or worthy. This word awful that you use all the time does not mean something, it means something bad today, but it didn't start off that way. It meant something that was worthy of awe. We've changed the language, we've changed the definitions. I think we can do it even with our perceptions of each other, of law enforcement, and of the kinds of groups we have. We could change this if we wanted to.